And of course, no meeting of the Democratic 21st Century Club will be complete without our illustrious Santa Clara County Party Chair, Bill James. Will also be our distinguished timekeeper today. So candidates, you'll want to keep an eye on this table right here in front of the podium. And Bill will, I want to go over, well, first let me introduce the candidates and then we'll go over the ground rules. So we have two really highly qualified candidates today, both running for the supervisor seat in Santa Clara County. Margaret Abe-Koga, sorry, is on the Mountain View City Council. She is also a working mom, former small business owner, and breast cancer survivor. She was born and raised on the peninsula by immigrant parents from Japan. Graduate of Harvard University, Margaret has served as a congressional aide to U.S. Representative Anna Eshoo and as district director for Assembly Member Evan Lowe. She was the first AAPI woman to serve as vice mayor and mayor in Mountain View's history. She raised two daughters with her husband, Gyoto. Please give a warm welcome to Margaret Abe-Koga. Also be hearing today from Sally Lieber. Sally was elected to her current position on the California State Board of Equalization in 2022. She has previously served on the Mountain View City Council and the California State Assembly, where she represented the cities of Mountain View, Sunnyvale, Cupertino, and portions of Santa Clara and San Jose. She held the office of Speaker Pro Tem in the 2007 legislative session. Sally currently serves as an advisor to the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority and served on Attorney General Kamala Harris's transition team working on women's rehabilitation and mental health. Please give a warm welcome to Sally. Let me just, for the audiences, our candidates have been made familiar with the ground rules, and also we also wanted them to have advanced copies of the topics that we wanted to cover today. So we provided those to them. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes for their answer. We'll alternate, so one candidate will go first on one question, the next candidate will go first on the other question, and we'll alternate like that back and forth. Starting with the starting will be was determined by a coin toss that we did at the beginning before the event. Be watching the timekeeper. The timekeeper will alert the candidates sitting right here. Bill will, and he'll alert them when there's 15 seconds left, and then also when their time is up. We really appreciate the candidates respecting that time because we want to get as many questions and as much input in as possible. We intend today's forum to be focused on the issues, not personalities. So I don't think we're going to have any problem there. This is not a Trump rally. And if time permits, we will also invite questions from the audience. So without further ado, let's have the candidates come up and take their podiums, and then I will read the first question. By coin toss, Sally will answer the first question first, and then we'll alternate after that. I'm going to have to use my high school theater voice, so hopefully you can hear me in the back. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I'll be good. So thank you. So first question. A little preface here. Margaret, you previously considered running for this seat 12 years ago, but decided against it. You're currently in your second stint on the Mountain View City Council. Sally, you've held a variety of elected offices over the past 20 years and recently moved from the Mountain View Council to the State Board of Equalization. Question for both of you, and we'll have Sally go first. Why do each of you want to be a county supervisor right now?
Well, thank you so much for that question, and I'm very mindful that we get here in the room the current supervisor in that seat, Supervisor Joe Smithian, and also his predecessor, Supervisor Liz Miss, who are here. So that's stressful to have you here. But I want to say that being in this race is not where I thought that I would be right now. I ran for the State Board of Equalization and I love it. I spent 3 terms in the State Assembly on Revenue and Taxation Committee. And I know that's not a subject matter that excites everyone, but it's one that I really have an affinity for. And also, since I'm chairing the State Board of Equalization, I serve on the Franchise Tax Board as well. So people have asked me, well, when is it going to be enough for you with the taxes, Sally? And I really feel strongly about being in this race right now because we are at a very transitional moment for the Board of Supervisors. As careful watchers of the board will know, many of the members of the board are coming in from city councils or from a large school board, and I felt strongly about bringing my legislative experience and my experience on regional boards, as well as my experience being a county commissioner into this arena. I really didn't make a decision until I had heard from so many members of the community who strongly urged me to run and decided that I would throw my hat in the ring. The county's issues are very compelling to me. It's the work that I come out of in terms of social services, corrections, healthcare, and other topics that we'll take up during this forum. So again, I want to thank you so much for having us here.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here as a longtime member of the Century Club. Interesting to be on this side of the dais, but so I was sharing with some of my table mates. My first foray into local government was as an intern for then San Mateo County Supervisor Anna Eshu, and she really inspired me in so many ways. But I saw what county government did at that time, and it really spoke to me as who I am as a person, the daughter of immigrants, and then later on, now, many years later, working mom, I mentioned small business owner, and a breast cancer survivor. So what the county does really speaks to me and my lived experiences. As mentioned, 12 years ago, I was briefly running for the seat, and then I know he's here, but Supervisor Smithian is someone that I really appreciated and valued our relationship for many years, and he chose to run for the seat as well. So I stepped off and supported him. And hindsight is the 20/20 vision, frankly, but at that time, my older daughter, was actually starting to see signs of mental health challenges. And if you know me, then you know that my family is always number one. My daughters are what inspire me and motivate me to do this work in public service. So I think timing wise, this just worked out that way. I could not have put in the effort I would have needed to win with my family situation. I was taking care of my elderly parents as well. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer a couple of years later. So I returned to the city council after 8 years because my first 8 years was about budget deficits and closing the deficit, and I didn't feel like my job was done. So I came back for another 8 years, and I can say now after 16 years, I feel like my job is done. I've been able to accomplish what I set out to do, so I'm ready for the next challenge. Thank you.
I hope everyone will forgive me if I just take a moment here because Jose, don't leave, come back. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Jose and his team. They did a fantastic job. Catch him or hit him out of the park. So I just wanted to thank you very much, Jose. Thank you. I promise I'll give this back to you, Margaret. Okay, question number 2. The county currently carries a significant structural budget deficit that could soon reach $500 million. How would you plan to deal with this deficit if elected? And Margaret will go first.
Thank you. It seems that I don't know if you can call it bad timing, but as mentioned, I was mayor in 2009 during the Great Recession, and our city faced a budget deficit. So I led the city to close that deficit, and we've had surpluses ever since. At the same time, I was also on the VTA board as vice chair, and was given the responsibility of closing their $40 million deficit, which we were able to do. And so I think I have quite a bit of experience in this arena. I'd say for our city, and number one key is transparency in the budget and the budget process. It's a very long document, as you all know, but it's really important that we understand what's in there, revenue side and expenses. So that's going to be my first project, is to understand and learn the budget, as I've done here at the city. I think, again, there's two sides to the equation. There's revenue generation, and there's some opportunities in that regard. And then, of course, we'll have to probably look at some cuts. I think that here it's really important to engage the community and the stakeholders, and that's what I've done at the city. We did an incredible community engagement process when we had to look at the deficit to see what the priorities of the community were. I also worked really closely with our employees, and I actually had to go to them and to the unions, and they agreed to it. And that really is what saved us. So it's really about that communication and figuring out our priorities and working with folks and being honest and transparent. And that's what I would do at the county. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Well, when I went into the state legislature on day one, we had a $29.5 billion shortfall. And Joe is nodding with probably some PTSD from going through that process. And it was very, very painful because the Republicans in the state legislature wouldn't vote for any cuts, and they wouldn't vote for any revenue increases. And when we talked with our friends across the aisle, they said, we're just in it for one thing only, and that is to wreck the beast that government is. And so what I learned from going through that really painful budget crisis was that it really behooves you to restrict your spending on the front end, to do fewer of the nice to have items and more of what's core and strengthening for the county. What is core to me is the staffing for county programs that make a difference in the community. And I was very heartened to see Supervisor Ellenberg say at a recent meeting, we need to pump the brakes on the budget, and we need to do it now, because there are so many nice to have items that can be added in, and the core can really be the last thing that is protected. So I'm going to be looking at all different ways at the budget and looking for where we can have revenues. We're going to be getting more from the state in terms of reimbursements for healthcare, where additional groups of individuals in our state can be signed up for Medi-Cal, and that's going to be tremendous to get those payments from the state.
Thank you, Sally. Excuse me. Question number 3. Question number 3. The Board of Supervisors recently voted, not long ago, to acquire San Jose Regional Medical Center at significant one-time and ongoing costs. This follows pandemic-era board decisions to acquire 2 other private hospitals. What are your thoughts on these past decisions, and how would you approach fiscal management of the 5 hospitals now under county control? And Sally will go first.
Thank you. For me, and I hope I'm not going out on a limb with either of the 2 supervisors that are here, but for me, the acquisition of Regional Medical Center was a no-brainer. It costs so much less to buy a hospital that already exists than it would to build one. And the East Side really needs the health justice of having a hospital there, in particular having the trauma services, right there in the community instead of sending people over long distances to other hospitals. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it and say that it's gonna be easy to face these costs, and there are some labor differences between the workers who are currently in the county's hospital system and the workers who are at regional medical center. And so that's gonna be a little bit of a change to get over. But I think it's something that we just absolutely positively had to do. And I think the thing that I see out there looming right now is the situation that the county can face with Proposition 36. And this is the proposition to, if I may editorialize, regrow the state prison system. Everyone has said, well, there's gonna be mental health diversion that judges can send people to. That capacity does not exist. And so there's an open question if the county is going to be the one to have to step into that at additional cost, when there's also already been deferral by the voters of Prop 63 Mental Health Services Act money. So it's going to be a difficult path, but I've specialized in difficult paths my whole life.
I agree that the purchase of regional medical was the right decision, given the options, and regardless, the patients would have had to be served and would have most likely been served by the county. So having the hospital there was the right decision. I agree with the same with St. Louis. I've had a chance to tour the hospitals and see their state and where they are located, and so definitely there's need, and so I appreciate the supervisor's decisions on that. But fortunately, there was one-time funding to purchase regional medical. The real question and challenge is operating moving forward. I've had the opportunity also to talk with the physicians and the nurses. Both the groups have endorsed me solely in this race. And they have a lot of good ideas, frankly, on how to operate the healthcare system and try to operate it more efficiently. Right now, my understanding is the general fund of the county covers about $500 million of the cost. So we do need to bring it to a more cost neutral place. Medical reimbursement and increasing those reimbursements will definitely help. But again, I think there are other opportunities, and number one, there is a staffing shortage, and that's what I've heard from the increased staffing, and frankly, putting in some investment up front. In business, we do say you have to spend a little money to make money sometimes, and I think there's some equipment upgrades. Even the facilities will probably need to be upgraded, so we'll have to figure out how to do that. But I think that's an important investment to do now rather than later, because things just get more expensive the longer you wait.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, next question. Building on the previous one about the hospitals, Sally alluded to this. There may be differences in demands and expectations of the labor unions representing workers at the regional medical center and those currently representing other county health in the same classifications. In broad terms, what would be your approach to addressing such differences related to contract negotiations? And Margaret will go first.
Thank you. Well, mergers and acquisitions are always challenging with transition. I've heard that there are definitely those challenges in this situation. As mentioned, I'm fortunate to have been endorsed by many folks, 150 elected officials, and most of the major organizations, including the sole endorsement of the South Bay Labor Council and the county employees unions, SEMA, the nurses, the physicians. So And that's really based on, I believe, my experience, with working with our like union groups, our labor groups over the years. And it's been really important for me from day one to be transparent and to listen to all sides. And I'll say my example here in Mountain View, when I first walked into my role here, it wasn't the case. And there was a possible World War III about to start between management and our fire union. And it was really about just listening to both sides and then coming up with, the best decision I can make, and also just working together to find common ground. And I think that's what it'll take here. The vision here, we're now all under one umbrella. We need to have the same vision and goal. And then it's just gonna take, I think, a lot of hard work and conversation and collaboration, consensus building. Not everybody's gonna get everything they want, but understanding that, but working together to come up with a process, standards that will integrate everyone. And I've heard that it's been a challenge to integrate the hospitals that have already been purchased with their employees, and we have another one coming. So I think it's just really going to be about sitting down with folks and having honest conversations with them.
Right. So there are going to be a lot of growing pains with this thing. And the information that I have, and others can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the nurses at regional medical are represented by CNA. And the nurses at Valley Med are represented by the very much smaller RNPA. That is not nationwide, it's specific to Santa Clara County's public hospital system. So the little fish is not going to eat the big fish. The California Nurses Association is not going to allow that to happen. So there's going to be some bumps in the road, some growing pains, cultural differences, etc. in this. And I think it's going to be up to the Board of Supes to find some ways to do the things that we can do within overall financial restrictions to make all of those entities reasonably happy. I think that for our individuals who work for the county, who work in the county health system, that we should have a preference in affordable housing for folks that meet the income qualifications for it. Because we have to keep our baseline workforce here in our county and serving the public. I think that there are some issues that maybe have been working their way through the system around security of frontline healthcare workers that could be a win for working with both of the entities that are at play here. But it's going to be a difficult transition. And I think that you get the most by listening to people at a very deep level and not giving away the entire public purse, which we cannot do at this time of budget deficits.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Margaret. Okay, next question. The Maine County Jail has seen a number of violent and even deadly incidents, either directly or indirectly caused by operational management. What would be your approach? How would you seek to prevent these tragic incidents in the future? What kinds of things could we do to help prevent that? And Sally will go first.
Okay, where shall we begin with this one? We're gonna go straight into it. Under Sheriff Lori Smith, the jails were an absolute horror show. There was massive corruption, massive brutality against people who had not even been convicted of a crime. Not that they should be brutalized after they've been convicted, but it was just an absolute horror show. One of my motivations at my core that is so close to my heart is thinking about my constituent, Andrew Martinez, who died in the Maine jail. He was one of the many people that was deemed incompetent to stand trial because of his mental health status and was not able to be transferred to the state hospital for treatment and to be brought back to competency. So he was in the Maine jail for 3 years. And he became more and more mentally ill. They were practicing what they call cell extraction on him using metal hooks and other devices. And ultimately, he was able to find a plastic bag within the institution, and he used that to kill himself. And for me, I have worked on jail and prison issues at the state level. It's not a fun topic to delve into, but I've gone into it fully and fearlessly. And this is what is really motivating me. If I had a magic wand to turn back time, I would go back to having a Department of Corrections instead of having the jail under the sheriff. But that's not possible. And now it's up to the board to control the kinds of deadly weapons that the sheriff's staff has access to, and I fully intend to do that.
Some of the incidents that have been referenced were under the former sheriff, and I have to say I'm very excited with our current sheriff. We've had opportunity to speak, and I've asked him how things work, and he's been very helpful in sharing with me what they're trying to do and reform. And we had similar discussions during after the George Floyd incident at the city of Mountain View with our police department, and looking at how we can reform and make things better. I've always been a champion for public safety. I always had the support of both police and fire. Here in this race again, I have the endorsement of the sheriff and the DA and the deputy sheriffs, police officers associations. And again, it's because I try really hard to work with them and to listen to them. And so I asked the sheriff, well, what can be done? And I was very pleased with what he shared with me. They have engaged in policy revisions. So updating their policies regarding use of force and aligning them with best practices. This is something we've been doing at our city as well. Training, I think, is so key, and I've always championed proper staffing, proper training, and proper equipment. So training can really go a long way. There's also a use of force review board, and they meet monthly to monitor and assess the incidents that occur. Monitoring and reporting is a part of that. And then a big thing that I'm hearing a lot about, we talk a lot about here too, is mental health resources. So both for the inmates so that they can get the help that they need, but also for the staff. There's a lot of what they see is pretty horrific at times, and they need that support too. Finally, there's an independent oversight review department. And in the past, it was contentious, but I've heard it's gotten better. So I'm actually excited about the changes that are happening.
Thank you, Margaret and Sally. Next question. How would you propose to partner with the county, how would you propose the county partner with Valley Water to provide safe, clean drinking water for county residents and ensure that water in county open spaces is clean and safe for wildlife and public recreation? And we'll start with Margaret.
Thank you. I had a little time I spent on the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board, so got to learn a little bit about water. And then as a city too, we have water quality issues, a treatment plant that we run. So I think that the first approach would be to ensure consistent and proper monitoring of the water quality in our different bodies of water. For us, especially in the cities, we often talk about the urban water runoff pollution that can happen. And lately we have had to deal with some of that relative to the homeless population as well. So I would acknowledge that. So partnering with Valley Water and the different agencies, the different municipalities on the prevention program, I think would be key. I've learned that the underwater storage tank oversight program actually falls under the county, under the Department of Environmental Health. So I want to make sure that they have what they need to do the proper monitoring and any mitigations that might be required after that. And then again, going back to working with the various regulatory agencies, and it is a very, everything is very complex and so many different agencies involved, but we're making sure to work with the Water Quality Control Board and EPA and other entities to monitor consistently and then mitigate whatever
So two things. One, that many people are talking about. The second, that almost no one is talking about yet. The first one that many people are now talking about is the impact of homelessness on our creeks, waterways, and parks, etc. And to my mind, and this is something that I pursued very strongly on our city council, is that people have to be provided with a place to go. There isn't any mystery, or there shouldn't be, about why people go into these relatively secluded areas around the creek banks and etc. They are seeking safety. It's not because people like to live in a moist, muddy, messy environment where it's going to flood. It's because they're seeking safety from the streets. People that are homeless become victims of crime with amazing frequency. And in particular, women that are experiencing homelessness experience a high degree, a high number of sexual assaults. That's why they're going in to seek safety. And I think we have to come up with other alternatives, like sanctioned camping, safe camping areas that are not in the creek beds, for people to be able to seek safety. We also have to reinvigorate our shelter system that is all but overwhelmed right now. It is barely functioning. And the second issue that I don't hear a lot of folks talking about is what is going to happen with climate change. Many of us have heard about sea level rise. Some of us have thought about bay level rise. Very few have talked about the flooding that is going to come from groundwater rise and from rising groundwater, bringing toxins and our toxic plumes in the South Bay closer to where we draw drinking water.
The Board of Supervisors is about to consider adopting ranked choice voting, also known as instant runoff voting, for county elections, including races for the seat that you're both seeking. What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting? And if you were on the board today, how would you vote? And we'll start with Sally.
So I support ranked choice voting. I think it is a strategy to get some of the money out of the system. I know that we're all have mailboxes. As we look at our mailboxes these days, the mail is just overflowing, screaming at us. And we need to bring it back to a marketplace of ideas, and less a marketplace of the brute force of money. And this has really changed under Citizens United as well. I've been a longtime board member of the Clean Money campaign. I am the candidate who fought for lower giving limits in the city of Mountain View when I was on city council, fought for $1,000 as the county has instead of $5,000. And we have got to create ways for the will of the people to come through this horrible torrent of money. And I really think that instant runoff voting is one of those ways, because the people that are barraging the voters can still come in first, but people have a chance to say, this person's name is everywhere, but this person has really good ideas. They're my number two. So we can restore some sanity to elections using instant runoff voting. So obviously I would support it and vote for it.
Well, I've heard that the public still has some mixed feelings about this, and frankly, I am trying to learn as much as I can about it and completely open to any methods to increase higher voter turnout and better ways to engage the voters. A more collaborative government, frankly, but I would really like to actually learn more and hear from the voters and residents who live in the communities such as Oakland or Berkeley or San Francisco, to get their thoughts and their opinions on the process. My biggest question mark is that I don't want to do anything that would deter folks from voting. And coming from my background, having worked on civil rights and empowerment of communities of color, especially with the Asian American community, frankly, for new folks, new immigrants, new citizens, it can be, our current system can be very complicated and challenging. There's a language access issue. So I just want to make sure and want to ensure that all of those boxes are being checked off, so we're not going to create new barriers to participation and actually, in fact, increase participation. I agree with campaign finance. I was the one who voted for lowering our limits in Mountain View. It was actually a 4-3 vote to $1,000. We have a voluntary spending cap in Mountain View of about $30,000, very low. And in exchange, if you abide by it, you get a discount on your ballot statement, and that's how we've been able to get around the some of the free speech issues. So, certainly looking at, but that's a different issue. I think we do need to look at campaign finance reform as a completely separate issue and really tackle that.
Thank you, Margaret and Sally. With Measure A funds nearly all committed to current and future affordable housing projects, and a Bay Area-wide ballot measure to build more housing now back on the drawing board, what can Santa Clara County do to address the ongoing crisis of housing and homelessness? And Margaret will go first.
I was, or I still am, on the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority Committee that worked on the $20 billion regional housing bond measure that was supposed to be on the November ballot. And we worked really hard on it, but I did have some concerns. Mainly the public right now is not really excited about new revenue generating measures, and the polling had always been pretty low, but sometimes, you just have to give it a try. So I was willing to go with it, but we had some legal challenges in the end. And so I have to say it was probably one of my saddest days when I had to vote to take the measure off the ballot. But we are already in conversations. There was a big coalition of housing advocates that we were working together to try to make this measure happen. Number one, the other issue too is that Proposition 5 is on the ballot. That's the one that will lower the bond measure passage, and that needed to pass, frankly, for the regional housing bond measure to pass. And it was a big lift to do both. So number one, please vote for Proposition 5. We need to get that passed. Number two, again, we're having these conversations. What's next? Do we go out for another regional measure? And I'll be honest, with 9 Bay Area counties, very diverse. We have Napa County, Solano County, Santa Clara County. And so it was a challenge to get everyone together. I was amazed that we were able to get as far as we did, but I'm not sure that is going to be the best path forward. Measure A, 2016 in Santa Clara County, extremely successful, 5,500 units being built or have been built. And so perhaps we look at something more close to home. I think we're very fortunate in Santa Clara County that we are big enough and we've had these successes, and our public is actually very supportive of taxing themselves for transportation and housing. So it would certainly be open to doing something in our county.
I want to first say that my hat is off to everyone behind Measure A, especially current supervisor Cindy Chavez and all of our current board of soups. I think we need to tell that story of the success of Measure A. Because everywhere that I campaign, people are asking, well, whatever happened to Measure A? And the money was spent and it was spent well. Even the civil grand jury, who can tend to be a little bit expressive, said we give Measure A an A+ for getting the money out the door effectively and efficiently. And I think that now we need to pursue other strategies. Far too much time was spent on a $20 billion Bay Area-wide housing bond. I'm a progressive Democrat who starts every morning by reading the Wall Street Journal. And you don't have to have much more than tea leaves to see that people are not in a mood to look at something with a $20 billion price ticket on it. So unfortunately, there isn't a plan B for Santa Clara County in this election where there's going to be large progressive turnout. I think that would have been a better tack to take. But what we need to do at this juncture is to look at what we're going to do at the end of the 5-year plan on housing and homelessness that we've had. Santa Clara County has put a real emphasis on permanent housing, which is great, but we also need to have shelter space, because we can't have it be that there's a gulf between sitting under a bush in the rain and being in permanent housing. We have to have more options in the middle. They may not be perfect, but they will get people out of the rain.
First, I want to thank our candidates for being so respectful of the time limits, because as a consequence, we now have a little time for questions and answers from the audience. I'll take a little privilege here and start with one. This is a tough one, and so you're both to be forgiven if you don't have a ready answer. But perpetual, endless growth is simply not possible, I submit. Therefore, and it's a huge driver of all kinds of problems, that we have. This endless fascination with and commitment to how do we accommodate more growth instead of, is that really what we want to do? So starting, I believe, with Margaret.
I think it would start with.
Is it Sally?
Sally.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. What thoughts do you have on possibly encouraging some sort of stabilization of Santa Clara County or Bay Area growth in light of that?
I'm ready. I've got hot lava inside me right now that's waiting to get out. One of our big issues here in the Valley is that our housing has been commoditized on the international market. So we see entities, including some capital funds that we don't even maybe fully understand, who are buying en masse our housing in the Santa Clara Valley. And I think that we need to do a lot of affordable housing in all kinds of ways to catch up, because it can't be the case that we're just looking at housing that is $200,000 down for a condo. We need housing for the baseline of people that actually live here and work here and do the supportive jobs that we all need. We've all heard about eating the goose that laid the golden egg. Well, if we don't have any hospital workers, mental health workers, people to stock grocery shelves, etc., it's not going to do us a whole hell of a lot of good that we have beautiful condos that are $2 million. So we need to be very intentional about this. And one thing that I didn't fit into my last comment, but it's germane to this, is that we need to be very intentional in our RFPs and go on a search for best practices. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the last time that the board issued an RFP for the provider at the homeless shelter in Sunnyvale, there was one respondent. So we have to think about county spin-outs, about best practices, about how we can be very intentional about what it is that we actually want.
As the daughter of immigrants, I look at it from that perspective that, you know, my parents came here, and were able to build a life and raise me. And so I do feel that, you know, this is a great place. Obviously, the Bay Area is the best place to live. And so I see that, attraction. And, so it's hard to say, oh, no, we're gonna just, you know, stop letting people come live here. But there are constraints, and I very much understand that, housing being one of them. And what I've really focused on, you know, now we are very proud of our leadership in housing. We offer housing, different types of housing. We've tackled the homelessness issue above and beyond what most cities do by offering safe parking lots, transitional housing, affordable housing developments, and we allow for, you know, regular housing development too. But for me, the emphasis has always been about making sure that these new developments fit in with existing neighborhoods and communities. And I think that's actually why we've been so successful here. Sometimes I actually get, you know, housing advocates saying, well, we want more faster. We want, you know, and I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've seen that we've tried to bring people along gradually, and that's what makes it work. If you know, just get too extreme, people will just shut down. So that's been my approach to this. The other piece with housing is really extremely important, transportation. And I've been on VTA, I'm on the Caltrain board, I'm on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Frankly, we need more investment in public transit. We need to bring it back. And if we can have good, robust transit, we can solve a lot of our housing issues too. So understanding, and then that all ties into climate change. So I think there's a way to do all of this, but we really need to look at everything together and have the connectivity and work on that.
So if you have a question, can you raise your hand and I will come to you with the microphone. If you would, please stand and project, that would be helpful. I will be, and then I'll bring it right back to you, Margaret. So let me go to Rob first.
So we've heard from Sally about homelessness, and we've heard about the budget from Margaret, and I've got a suggestion I'd like to hear your feedback on. Yes, we have a lot of investors from outside the area that are sucking resources out of our community by buying up houses. Whether we're talking about Chinese nationals or whether we're talking about Wall Street investor funds, they are adversely affecting our housing market here. And if we put a wealth tax on their properties, anything that they own, these outside investors own, rather than the people that are actually living in the places, then we have an opportunity to discourage their investment, liberate that housing, fill those ghost houses that you talked about. And I'm wondering what you think about that kind of an idea, putting a wealth tax on that really shifts the market a little bit.
And it's Margaret's turn to go first.
I think we have a lot of work that can be done in terms of our taxation system, so I'm open to it. I had a chance to go on a study tour of Vienna, Austria, earlier this year, and they have some of you may have heard about their model, their social housing model. And some of the takeaways I had, although I very much recognize very different system, they're more socialistic than our system here, but I think there are some takeaways. One, that the government has actually over 100 years acquired land, and that's where they build their affordable housing. Land acquisition has been something in Mountain View that we focused on, and we frankly generate quite a bit of revenue from our rents and leases to Google right next door. But I think having that control is really important. They also have they have these limited profit corporations. So in exchange, the government will provide loans and grants for development to happen. And in exchange, the developers will cap their rents. So, and I think that's really important. We can't just have strict, just caps without something on the other side. And so there's a model there that I think we could look at. I think they mentioned the public bank, so they have a program, and that was part of the BAFA, the regional housing measure, was having a bank where you loan out to developers, and as they pay it back, you loan it out again, so you have this revolving loan program, and New York City has a corporation that does that, and they generate billions of dollars each year to build more affordable housing. And the last one was interesting was that once you are, everyone, if you're a citizen, a resident, and an income level, you get guaranteed affordable unit, and you get to hold on to that for the rest of your life, and you get to pass it on. So this idea of allowing everyone to have that opportunity, I think resonates. So some ideas to think about down the road.
I didn't get to go to Vienna, so I'm kind of interested to hear what she says. But I would not be in favor of the county buying more land in the hopes of leasing it. The reason that that has worked for us in Mountain View is that the land here in North Bay Shore was part of the town dump. And so we had excess land that we could get new companies like Google when they were just growing. Now the commercial office market is shrinking. So we need to look at exactly the opposite strategy of looking at, excuse me, we need to look at buying the office space that we need before the rates go up. Thank you so much. And in terms of the question that was asked about the tax, I note that some local communities elsewhere in the country are banning certain financial funds from buying housing in their communities because they see what capital has done. And I saw that in my own home neighborhood in Detroit, where they would go around and buy the homes, keep them empty. And the way that they checked that they were still empty is they broke the windows in the house. And they said, I asked them about that practice, and they said, well, you know, nobody's gonna live in a house with windows broken out. So if we happen to send a drone around and not see that the window is no longer broken, then we know that there's a squatter or somebody living there. So we have to be very careful around these predatory entities that are out there. And I think, again, we need to have an approach that is really inclusive in terms of what housing is. It used to be the case that we used to have commercial safe parking lots on the peninsula. They were called RV parks, and they were very successful.
Afraid we only have time for one more. I saw there was a hand over here. Sorry, we don't have more time.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the tough question. I'm gonna speak for the trees, so to speak, and when I counter. You have 32 potential years, 8 in the future, and then 8, and then 8 and 8 going back. And the question is, you're the supervisor that will get to babysit Stanford University, which I understand we have a great legacy of essentially babysitters here. So I'd like to ask, what is your vision of how to work with Stanford? And if it's not a great question, maybe we'll talk about other large campus entities like Google, but helping them do their fair share on community impact mitigations.
And I believe it's Sally's turn to go first.
Okay, great. Throw it to a Stanford alum. But I have to say that Stanford has sweetheart deals that are baked into our state constitution that no other entity in our state has. And so I'm so thankful for Supervisor Joe Smithian demanding accountability around Stanford's production of housing for people who work on campus, for securing protection of the foothills for the next 99 years. And that's something that we all have to fight on into the future. And you said specifically the trees. My back of the napkin calculation is that we need at least 30,000 more trees in Santa Clara County. And we need them to be wanted trees, cared for trees, We need them to be culturally competent for the neighborhood that they're in and environmentally competent for the neighborhood that they're in. Our climate is shifting such that native plants are no longer necessarily the answer. And so we have to look at that. CAL FIRE is doing a great job of providing grants to communities, but they will not provide money for fruit trees. And we know that there are many, many people in our geographic roots in the South Bay come out of a lot of presence of fruit trees. And so I think we should look at ways that we can help to facilitate that we can help to have breaking out of actual concrete in tree deserts and planting of trees with a plan to care for them and provide them to people who actually want to steward a tree. I love going over to our park in Mountain View, and I was sitting under a tree one day with some folks and they said, boy, this tree is really growing sideways. And I said, well, actually, I planted this tree, but I didn't plant it sideways.
I think the question was about the relationship with Stanford, and yes, I very much appreciate Supervisors Simeon and really a lot of us the city. He gathered our cities together to talk about the consequences of growth, and I remember Mountain View, we wrote a letter of concern regarding housing, and that we asked Stanford to make sure that they mitigate the impacts of their population growth by ensuring that they have adequate housing so that it doesn't spill over to our neighboring communities. So, but as you know, we're next door to another large entity, Google, and I have spent my 16 years on the city council dealing with them. And I got advice from someone in the philanthropy world, actually, because, you know, when we had Google come in, and I know Apple, some folks from Cupertino in here, you know, folks say, oh, wow, we can ask them to do this and that and all of these things for the community. But in reality, that wasn't what was happening. And, you know, my friend and advisor said, you know, look, Margaret, everything is a negotiation. As a business, there's a bottom line, and that's what they're gonna always do. So that's how I treated it, is we just have to negotiate. And in the very beginning, when I started here, we were actually giving a lot of things away for free as a city and not asking for the private sector to invest in our community. And I decided, you know, we needed to change that. So we started asking or requiring community benefits. And that's what we've been able to gain, including wildlife, wetland restoration. We have a big issue where they're telling us they're not going to do their projects, and they've cut down a whole bunch of trees. And so we're working with them to mitigate that so that they replant all of the trees from their tree farm. So again, it's about negotiation and working to come up with solutions together.
All right, we want to thank our candidates for coming today. I think as the Democratic Party, we can be duly proud of the embarrassment of wealth that we have in candidates that our party has been able to present us with. And I feel personally very confident that Joe Savidian's very large shoes will be very fully filled. So, a round of applause, please.